In this video, 5 people working at haunted places tell their stories. Enjoy.
The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, formerly known as Weston State Hospital, is a Kirkbride building that housed the mentally ill from 1864 to 1994. In 2007, it was privately purchased and has become a museum/historic location and ghost hunting spot. It has a very unpleasant and dark history that I've regaled to thousands of people, and it pains me to be an expert on the subject. In 2021, I retired from my position as a guide and ghost hunt event manager, under severe burnout. After all that I experienced there, it solidified in my mind that paranormal things that defy rational explanation do indeed happen, and certain phenomenon are absolutely real. Electronic voice phenomenon especially. It's almost October, and I'm feeling a little spooky, so here are a couple of strange things I experienced in my time there. One evening, while training for the job, I was on the first floor with a couple co-workers, while everyone else was touring upstairs. We were just kinda killing time, quietly observing the area. Light from outside was coming in through the windows, casting on the inner hall's wall. In that light, I watched the perfect silhouette of a man from head to hip walk through that light from left to right. I said something about it, and the three of us watched as an arm and hand moved into the light from the right side. I immediately ran into the room, and began looking out of that window for someone outside. There was no one there. At that time, the realization that from the ground to the bottom of the window is like 7 feet, didn't even occur to me. I will never forget the crisp, clear silhouette shape for as long as I live. We would also run experiments with a spirit box. It rapidly scans radio frequencies, and is believed to be a communication device. One person would use one with noise-canceling earbuds. All they're able to hear is the radio static and blips of a few random station. When they hear a word or phrase, they are to say it out loud. I always liked this role in the experiment. One evening, my co-worker and I ran one of these experiments in a notorious room where a murder in 1987 took place. For 10 minutes, I sat and listened to nothing but radio static through the spirit box. No blips of radio, nothing except the static noise. I was starting to get bored when I heard a woman's voice say evil. So I spoke up and repeated the word evil. Next thing I know, my coworker is shining her flashlight in my face to get my attention. I pull out the earbud, and she was practically frantic saying, "It's time to go, time to go." So we get out of the room, down the hall, down the next hall to the center section before she would even tell me what happened. While I was hearing nothing but static, she said she kept hearing what sounded like someone shuffling their feet and walking around just outside of the door. She said she spoke up and asked whoever is out in the hallway, "Are they nice?" That was when I spoke out and said evil. In the wee hours one night, we figured it would be cool to see what would happen if we shut all the doors of the ward. One of the doors, as I was closing it, the knob twisted in my hand and was forcibly pulled closed. I stood there for several moments opening and closing that door, trying to replicate what happened, trying to explain it. Finally the person with me was like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was so weird. I'd never felt invisible force like that before. Had 3 people spend the night once and they had thermal imaging video. They set it up, pointing down the hall where we could all watch on a tablet. We thought it would be interesting to leave a device at the far end of the hall that would alarm if the field around it was disturbed. As one of the dudes walked down the hall to put it there, we could see his form on thermal imaging. Clearly human-shaped in colors representing heat and warmth. When he walked by one of those doorways down the ward, the shape of a head, neck, shoulders and upper body of a person in colors indicating cooler temperatures lean peeked out. like someone popped out of the room for a second as he walked by, just to check him out. I've never seen anything like that, won't forget it, and would give my left testicle for a copy of that footage. Well, if I had one. That happened a lot, a guest capturing something far out, and not sending a copy to us. I'll end this long Reddit post with something that absolutely changed me and that I still don't understand. I remember the exact night and time of these occurrences. That's how profound, and somewhat unsettling they were. June 3rd, and June 4th of 2017, 3:40 a.m. June 3rd, after an hour or so of hearing a female's voice, as well as banging around, footsteps, literally running sounds on that hardwood floor toward us, I sat quietly on the floor with the group. I started to feel dizzy, lightheaded and gross. I told myself it was my imagination and that I'd be fine. Few minutes later, I started to feel this intense burning sensation on my lower back, just to the right of my spine. Again, I told myself it was all just my imagination. The burning sensation kept amping up, getting worse and worse. I told myself that I didn't want to be that guy and say anything in front of these people. Finally, it got to the point where I had to say something. I asked my coworker with us if there was anything there. She was like, OMG. There, on my lower back, just to the right of my spine, was a mark that looked like a burn or an abrasion about 3 to 4 inch long and about 1 inch wide. Now, I'd seen other such claims of scratch marks and the marks were always gone within an hour at most. I had visible marking on my back for almost a week. My nerves there, to this very day, often feel weird, sometimes chilled, sometimes like a skin soreness. Especially when I think on the experience. June 4th. Same part of the building, same time of night. I noticed that my voice recorder ran out of memory, so I'm holding it in my right hand, using the flashlight in my left so I could see what I was doing. Suddenly, I feel a burning sensation on the underside of my right forearm, and shifted my flashlight to it. The person beside me and I watched as 3 welts began to appear down my arm. Needless to say, that really blew my mind. It is one thing to see marks like that, it is a whole other to watch it as it happens on your own skin. Like the majority of instances I've heard about, those marks were gone within 10 to 15 minutes. No lasting effects. Scared would be the wrong word, but I have none to describe my mind frame around those events. I took a week off from work after it to try to process it all, and was nervous being in that hallway for the rest of that summer. Like I said, I still don't know what to think or believe. I will add a final note about how constantly poking around in the dark, and talking about past true horrors of human experience day in and day out truly takes its toll, spiritually and emotionally. Since my resignation, my mental health and overall level of happiness has greatly improved. I used to tell people for a while afterwards that it felt like I'd gotten out of a toxic relationship with that place. It's been 2 years since I worked at a bookstore that was haunted, and I've been thinking a lot lately about the spirit I saw twice. The first time I saw him, I thought it was a customer trying to get my attention. He was a few feet away from me and I saw him out of the corner of my eye waving at me. I turned to him and froze. He was an old man with frizzy white hair and black holes for eyes. He was smiling. I stared at him for a solid 5 seconds while he continued to wave at me before he faded away from his feet up. Suddenly, everything made sense. All of the times we'd feel like we were being watched, how none of us wanted to be anywhere alone after close because of an unexplainable eerie feeling, all the things that would disappear, all the books that would be relocated during the night, everything suddenly made sense. I asked a manager about it because she'd been there forever. I asked if she thought this place was haunted and she immediately said, "Did you see him?" From there, I learned that a few employees had seen this ghost over the years and most people had had an experience of some sort. I saw him again about 2 months before I quit. That time, he had red eyes. It was a spooky place and I'll never forget watching books fly off the shelves late one night or feeling my name tag being yanked from around my neck. Despite these encounters, that was still the best job I've ever had. The bookstore is Barnes & Noble in Erie, PA. I moved away and haven't been back in over a year, but I definitely plan to return someday. The fake haunted house I work at is actually haunted. For 12 years, I've worked as an actor for a local haunted house attraction. It's a lot of fun, as I get to play a variety of horror characters and act out different scenes. While the tours we put on are clearly fake, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that isn't. I should start off by explaining that the building we do this out of is extremely old and was once an elementary school. We gutted the section of the building that was classrooms and constructed it to what we needed. This is when we actually started having weird experiences. There's plenty of activity that can be shrugged off, such as feeling watched and hearing footsteps running in areas there is no one. Then there are things not so easy to disregard. Such as one evening, a member was working on hooking up our sound system by himself. He had not even hooked the large speakers up yet when he stated a loud deep growl came booming through them. This terrified him so much he ran out of the building and would not go back in to even lock up until another member came down to go in with him. He never worked alone in the building again. Other activity seems playful and childlike, such as hearing small giggles and whispering in the halls and in rooms that are empty. Things being moved from where we last placed them. One year, I was in a rocking chair that I would jump out of as a group came through. The thing about the rocking chair is it was more like a glider and it was broken. I would have to use a lot of force to get the chair to rock backwards at all. It was right before showtime. I was sitting in this broken chair getting mentally pumped for the night ahead. I was completely alone when I felt someone grab onto the back of the chair and harshly pull it backwards. I felt myself flying backwards with the chair and I honestly thought I would flip out of it. Thankfully, this did not happen, and as soon as I stabled myself I jerked to see who had done this. The room I was in was large and no one could get out of this room without me seeing them running away in the split second it took me to look behind me. There was absolutely no one there and I was suddenly covered in goosebumps. No one was even in the area around my room at the time. Later that same night, the lights were off, my stove was on and a group had just left my room when I noticed a small figure in the far right corner of the room. It looked like a small child crouching down looking my way, and I was immediately worried that a child had been left behind from the previous group. As I headed towards the figure to ask if they were okay, the strobe flashed and the figure was completely gone. This same year, but different night, I was again sitting in my chair waiting for the next group when someone or something growled right into my ear. It was so loud that it caused my ear to ring, and when I turned to see what it was, there was nothing but an empty room. I changed rooms the next year and did not experience as much creepy phenomenon. There's not much history I've been able to find out about the building, but I'm so curious as to what could be causing all the weirdness. This is only a tiny bit of what has been experienced over the years working there, and I don't feel it will be stopping anytime soon. Hello everyone. I've worked in the funeral industry for 6 years. It's corporate, so they have a local care center that services 8 individual funeral homes and 2 cremation societies. I think our average is close to 4,000 bodies a year. I've dabbled in embalming and directing, but most of my experience has been what they call a removal tech. Basically, I go and pick up the bodies from hospitals, facilities, homes, etc., and bring them back to the care center where I log them into storage. My one and only paranormal experience was about a year into starting the job. I get chills even typing this, because shortly after it happened, I was telling the story to some friends, and the same phenomenon happened again. So it was a typical work day. I worked the night shift and would be on call from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. Yes, it's very long hours, but I enjoyed it immensely. Plus, I'm very much a night person. I received a first call for a residential home in the area. The deceased was a woman in her late 50s. The director who took the first call had added notes, saying to be extra careful, because the family was distraught. I arrived at the home and spoke to the daughter and son. The deceased had died in the back bedroom and had fallen against the door. The woman was fairly obese, 320 pounds, and the fire department had to break the door to the bedroom down to get to her. After accessing the situation and going over paperwork with the family, I explained that we would not be able to get the gurney into the room. Small hallways and tight corners are a nightmare for us in this industry. I explained, I would have to set the gurney up in the living room and bring the deceased out to the gurney. I advised the family to step outside while me and my partner moved the body. It was a typical day at work so far. We got a sheet under the body and drug her out into the living room. I had set up the gurney in the middle of the room and right above us was a chandelier. We lifted her up and onto the gurney. The moment she was square on the gurney, the light bulb went out above us. I did not feel cold or scared. I didn't have any negative or scary vibes. Me and my partner just looked at each other. I had a sense that this was some sort of communication. Almost like this woman was watching us and screamed out when we placed her body on the gurney, seeing and accepting that she was in fact dead. My partner and I drove back to the care center and logged in the case without anything else happening. We both were stunned and had no explanation for the light. A month later, I was visiting some friends and told them the story. We were all sitting outside of drinks, and when I got to the light going out, I snapped my finger, accentuating how the exact moment she was on the gurney the light had gone out. When I snapped my finger, all the little plastic lawn lights went out. I honestly couldn't believe it. Since then, nothing else has happened, and I've told the story to other people with no paranormal activity. Did this woman stay with me for that month after, or was this another spirit? Out of the thousands of bodies I've picked up and crazy situations I've been in, I've never had anything like this happen before. Just makes you wonder what's really out there. Very eerie indeed. I was once working as a receptionist at a 5-star resort that's about 45 minutes away from the city center. Everyone who has worked in tourism or hospitality knows that there are certain periods during the year where it's busier than usual, i.e. peak season. This incident happened during peak season. The resort was overbooked and guests were checking into their rooms one after another at the reception counter. I was almost done checking in this nice lovely couple when I saw this family of 5 standing behind them, and tried to finish up the whole check-in process, so I could assist the family that was next in line. You must be thinking that when I said family of 5, it's the parents and 3 kids, right? But it's actually 2 kids and 1 elderly woman, who at that time, I assumed, was either the husband's or wife's mother. Now the resort's policy was to get the details of every guest that were staying in the resort. It is for a good reason, namely safety. It's the same reason that all airlines are doing when they obtain their passengers' info. So I told the husband that we needed everyone's details and he just said sure, no problem. Of course I was expecting 5 names on the registration form. By the time I realized there were only 4 names. The family were already at the concierge area to pick up their luggage, and then left to go to their rooms. I couldn't go after them as I was assisting another guest. Like I said, it was peak season. So all I could do was just watch them from afar, walking towards the elevators. The whole time they were walking, the old woman just followed them from behind quietly, but I didn't give much thought to it and went right back to assisting the guest that was in front of me. After the buzz had died down at around 4 p.m., I decided to ring the family's room to inform them that there were missing details. The husband came down to the reception alone and I told him I needed the info of his mother. This man just stood there, stared at me for what felt like a minute, and said it's only my wife and I and our 2 kids. Me, being confused obviously, said, "But sir, I saw there were 5 of you." At this point, I thought he was lying to avoid paying for a third-person charge for one of the rooms. They got 2 rooms and 1 room has only enough amenities for 2 persons, same goes for the buffet breakfast that's included. He took another minute and asked me, what did this elderly woman look like? To which I explained that she had gray hair and it was short, like a bob haircut. I also told him that she was wearing this red cheongsam shirt, similar to this with a long black slack pants. Right as I told him that, he quickly took out his phone, frantically scrolled for a few seconds and showed me a picture of the same woman in the same clothes lying in a closed coffin that had a clear glass cover, so you could still look inside. I just nodded slightly and he said that it's his mother, she died unexpectedly a few months ago. I was, to no surprise, too shocked to say anything at this point, but somehow managed to mutter the words, "I'm so sorry for your loss, sir, and I am so sorry about this." He just said it was okay, gave me a small smile, then left without saying anything. When they checked out 2 days later, we just pretended like that whole thing never happened. Luckily enough, the elderly woman was not there. Still get goosebumps just thinking about it till this day.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Hope to see you soon for more scary stories on Peaks from Dark.